Okay. I want to go over one other thing that they claim. Because I've heard, again, when I debate this guy who's their campaign manager, I've heard him say that there's 100,000 people in prison for simple possession of marijuana. Well, the Justice Department got really fed up with this several years ago, and they put out a pamphlet called Who's Really in Prison for Marijuana? And what it turns out is almost everybody in prison on a marijuana charge did one of three things. They pleaded down from something more serious, they had much more serious prior convictions, or they were on probation for a more serious prior conviction, or they were caught with a large amount. The median amount was 115 pounds. We keep saying, there are no grandmothers with cancer in prison for marijuana. And what we've been saying is, if they did have a poster child, if there were any patient, legitimate medical patient in prison for marijuana, they'd have it plastered on every TV screen and billboard in the state. So we asked the campaign manager, again on live radio, to name one patient in prison. And he said, I can't name anyone right now. And we said, that's because there aren't any. He says, I'll get you some and I'll post them on my website. Well, a few days later, we went back to their website, and the whole page that talks about people being in prison who are patients had disappeared. So their whole campaign is called Stop Arresting Patients. Patients aren't being arrested. I work with drug addicts, and they scam me all the time. I mean, they're better at it than I am. They pull stuff on me, but I don't like it when they do. And I'm used to it, but I don't like it when. And this is the biggest scam I've ever seen. I mean, they're trying to scam an entire country on this. Crime, Sheila Polk would be much better on this, so I'm just going to tell you. She's also, I heard her talking about this whole thing about patients being arrested. I mean, the laws on marijuana in Arizona, and Arizona is considered a pretty tough state, but really, they're pretty nice on people. First arrest is a misdemeanor. They're not fair, and then the second two arrests, they just try to get them into treatment. I mean, they're not being really hard on these folks. And I want to see them get treatment. I've got a lot of patients, I have to tell you this, I have a lot of patients who tell me that they are clean and sober and happier today because they got arrested. I had a patient this week who said the best thing that ever happened to her was that Child Protective Services took her kids away and forced her to get clean and sober. And that's the reason I want tough laws on this. I'm not really interested in punishment, I'm interested in getting people into treatment. Because when they get clean and sober, they're quite happy. They keep making a big deal out of the fact that there will only be 120 dispensaries in the state. And we keep saying it doesn't matter. What matters is how many people are using. Also, anybody can grow their own, and there's no limit on that. They're saying there's a limit that they have to be 25 miles away from a dispensary, but we've had one lawyer look at it and they say, no, it doesn't say that. It says they can do it if they're 25 miles away, but there's other things in here that protect them if they're not. So it's very possible that if this passes, people can grow their own anywhere. It has to be indoors, but that's the only rule. Yes, but I don't want that. And this is the other thing. Landlords can't refuse to rent to somebody because they're a card holder, because they're growing their own. There's a lot of things in this law I don't like. Department of Health Services, they keep saying they can regulate it, but they really can't. If a doctor writes a prescription for a hangnail, DHS has to give them a card. They don't have any leeway on this. They keep saying the legislature will fix this. Arizona is voter protected. The legislature can't fix anything unless they get 3/4 vote in both houses, which is not easy. They keep saying it's going to pay for itself with taxes. It says right in there the dispensaries are tax exempt. There's nothing set up for taxing the marijuana itself right now. And what we're seeing in other states is that there's a marijuana lobby, just like there's an alcohol lobby and a tobacco lobby, and they fight taxes. So I don't think it's going to be taxed. In Colorado, they just had to budget an extra $1 million to pay for their medical marijuana program. I think it's cost them a couple million already. Anyway, that's my basic information. I'll take questions, but first I just want to say, please tell everybody you know to vote against this. I've got bumper stickers back there. We spent a lot of money on signs. They were all torn down within a day. I'm really unhappy about that. Actually, I talked to somebody at the Courier today. I want to get the papers to write something on this.
Yes. Last night on John Stossel, the reporter, he came out and said very boldly that he agrees with this. Why do you agree? Well, I agree with it because I think the states and the government should make money from it. Thinking about taxes, talking about California. They're crazy people out there.
Yeah. What's happened is over the past 20 to 30 years, the pro-marijuana forces have done a really good job of getting out a lot of information that's simply not true. I mean, you know, until not too long ago, they were saying marijuana never killed anyone, and you started coming up with these highway statistics. But they love saying stuff like that. And unfortunately, it's been very hard to get through to reporters because some of them hear what we're saying, but some of them, they just can't hear something that goes against the assumptions that they've made for years. Yeah, there's 14 states with medical marijuana laws, but they're very different. Because some states have laws like California's, Colorado, Montana, that has all these loopholes, so basically anyone could get marijuana. Then there's New Mexico and New Jersey, where the legislature wrote these really strict laws where it only goes to people with serious illness.
Could you address the Marinol issue? Marinol is what it's on the market right now. There's THC in it.
Yeah, Marinol is a synthetic THC, and it's used for appetite stimulus and, let's see what other thing, and nausea. Those are the main things it's used for. And I've talked to different doctors. Some say it works very well, and the only patients who don't like it are the ones who want to get high. And other people say, no, it really does not work as well. But it's, what I'm getting is it works fairly well. The Institute of Medicine basically came out and said, in fact, the AMA came out and said, we need to do research on marijuana. There's a lot of chemicals in there that are actually very helpful. But we do not recommend smoking marijuana. We do not recommend medical marijuana laws. Yeah, they basically, they want to do it the way where you get a medicine that helps people and doesn't cause harm.
Is there any requirement within the bill that says that a card-carrying individual must get re-examined by a doctor every so often for a doctor to certify that they still need to have the medical marijuana, or once they get the card, is it theirs for life?
Yeah, it's good for 1 year, which to me is an awful lot because you don't send people out with a prescription for a controlled substance and see them back in a year.
It's my understanding that as an employer, if a medical marijuana user is injured on the job, that it is still the employer's responsibility?
Oh yes. As an employer, not only that, you can ask them if they're a card holder, but they do not have to tell you. There's no way of actually finding out because they have confidential laws. So you can't actually find out if they're a card holder. But you know, if you try to discipline them, then they can tell you they're a card holder. You have to believe them. And yes, if they have an accident or if they hurt somebody else, you're just as responsible as ever. Okay, I was just asked to address the question because they're always saying it's less harmful than alcohol. And, okay, the pro-marijuana forces are always saying marijuana is less harmful than alcohol. And it's a mixed bag. There's certain things that alcohol does that marijuana does not do, but then there's certain things marijuana does that alcohol doesn't. Like I said, the big problem with marijuana is that most people who drink do not drink to get drunk. Now, my patients do. But that is not what most people do. But everybody who smokes pot smokes to get stoned. There's just no such thing as social marijuana use. I mean, and so and the pot is a lot stronger than it used to be. So it's impairing. I mean, for driving, it is a really big problem. And the other thing is that, I mean, more than just occasional pot use. I mean, like once a month or more really affects people's motivation. And I was talking to a guy who's a friend of mine who's a junior high teacher, and he just said, pot smoking students are just the worst. And the only thing nice about them is you don't have to grade papers that nobody hands in. But you know, it's just, they have no interest at all. And he talks to them, he says, you know, your life is going to go nowhere, and they just kind of look at him, and they don't hear. So I've got a big concern about what marijuana does to adolescents.